Hey everyone, before we continue the segment, don't forget to subscribe, like, dislike, leave a positive comment, leave a negative comment. I don't care. Thanks for watching, and now on to the program. Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to part 2 of this episode of the Table Talk segment, being a solo session I'm hosting, breaking down the article known as Technate, Ohio. We're just gonna, label it as that, without, giving it the whole name, obviously, because it's a long name. But right now we're jumping back into it, and I'm just going to be using one laptop for the research, so won't be going back and forth from there to there. Hopefully you can see me good. I know I got, the window open behind me with the light coming in, and I understand, that's terrible for, the camera facing the light. Hopefully me upping the exposure a little helps, but yeah, we're just going to continue on. So this section of the article is titled From Silicon Valley to the Silicon Heartland. In the decades after Wexner, Kessler and Epstein first dug in, New Albany has since emerged as the premier local in the United States for the booming data center industry. In 2014, the first notable data center moved into the Ohio Valley, with Compass Data Centers spending $60 million to place 5 data centers on a 9.2-acre parcel of land within New Albany Business Park. The New Albany Business Park is especially relevant to Wexner as it is owned by his New Albany Company. It is also home to Wexner-linked corporate data centers, including Wexner's Abercrombie & Fitch. Shortly after Compass Data Centers joined the neighborhood, Amazon Web Services, AWS, built 3 campuses in New Albany, followed quickly by Meta, then Facebook, and Google, each adding a campus in New Albany. Business is booming for the big tech companies in New Albany. Compass Data Centers expand their operations into Canada and Israel in 2019, with the latter coming to fruition through a partnership with Amazon Web Services, and after the Azrieli Group purchased a 20% stake in the company. The Azrieli Group was founded by the Israeli-Canadian tycoon David Azrieli, and went on to be the largest IPO ever on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange in 2010. It has since grown into Israel's largest commercial real estate developer. The Azrieli The name is spelled Azrieli. Azrieli? I guess that's how you'd pronounce it. Azrieli. Sometimes I gotta take a moment and spell the words out, and maybe it will come to mind. Azrieli. Azrieli Group is a known partner of another Canadian family dynasty, the Bronfmans. I guess that F is silent. The Bronfmans, who boast significant ties to both Wexner and Epstein. Interesting stuff here. Let's look up this guy, David Azrieli. Israeli Canadian. Israeli Canadian tycoon, blah, 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 blah. Died in 2014 at 92 years old. Polish Israeli American. Real estate developer, architect, philanthropist, with a net worth of almost $3.1 billion a year before he died. Okay, well, won't get too much into him. Let's also look up the Bronfmans. And just so you guys know, the names don't in this. Obviously, the names matter for people who want to, bring this stuff up, talk about it, argue about it with other people. But at the end of the day, it just goes to show that there are people with, a crap load of money who essentially think they could just do whatever they want because they have so much wealth. They could buy off, whoever, whatever, and essentially, do everything's within legal stature, within certain, borders. They really, hacked this game here that we call life. It's honestly bizarre when you read about these names and these families who just acquire immense amounts of wealth, and you're just sitting here like, no average person can relate to these people. Let's just put it straight. Like, I can imagine even the relatives of these people who don't have anything to do with this guy's wealth, who is making a name for himself, or this individual's wealth who's making a name for themselves. I can imagine a lot of their families and a lot of people close to their families kind of detest these individuals who end up being the ones with the billion-dollar net worths that think they can do whatever. So that's really all I had to take away from that paragraph in this section. As it stands today, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, and Meta all have data centers or commitments to build data centers within New Albany, Ohio. In addition to the data centers, Central Ohio has also welcomed a commitment from Intel to build one of the largest semiconductor factories in the world. This decision was made in no small part due to the state offering nearly $2 billion in incentives and tax breaks for the California-based Intel, including a 30-year tax break approved by state legislators allowing Intel to save $650 million. In February 2026, Intel announced delays until 2030 regarding this project. New Albany executives have described the Intel deal and the influx of big tech data centers as necessary to establish the Silicon Heartland in Ohio, with New Albany at its center. Interesting. Very interesting. This picture shows like a prime location in New Albany for like all the companies. Like I said, link to the article will be in the description, so you can view all this without me needing to turn my laptop or anything. Incidentally, Wexner and the New Albany Company played an eminent role in helping seal the Intel deal in Ohio. Let me take a drink of water real quick. My mouth is getting dry. Much better. It was representatives of the New Albany Company who approached the once quiet town of Johnstown, offering to pay upfront for hundreds of acres in and around the town. They paid well over market rate, and many sold their properties for over $1 million, though they had to sign non-disclosure agreements with the New Albany Company to lock in those prices. A few months after those deals were finalized, it was announced that Intel was planning to build its new semiconductor factories in the exact area. The Intel deal, wouldn't have happened without them. JP Nauseef, the CEO of JobsOhio, the state's private economic development group, told Forbes, JobsOhio incentivedly had secured a $150 million grant that paid for the land for the Intel factories, which formed part of an incentive package from the state of Ohio totaling over $2 billion. JobsOhio, a controversial dark money organization, is discussed in detail later in this piece. Let's look up JobsOhio. Never heard of that. JobsOhio. The state's unique private economic development corporation acts as a catalyst for high growth business investments and job creations that are helping propel the state's ingenuity and ambitions forward. Let's look at the website. Make great happen. JobsOhio. Sounds nice. JobsOhio makes it seem like they want to employ, everyone and, get rid of the unemployment as low as possible. But I highly doubt that is their mission. Yeah, I mean, you got a picture of the one guy on here, who's the CEO of Anduril. Palmer Luckey. What a name. I'm not even gonna give my opinions on that guy either, but you could probably tell what my opinions are just based on my reaction on my face and how I'm saying everything right now. But anyways, yeah, dark money organization. Not surprised. Let's see if any weird, interesting article titles say anything about JobsOhio. Okay, you can find out what the average person, someone relatable to you, is saying via Reddit. I used to have a Reddit account. Don't anymore, just because I was on there a lot and just wanted to get rid of, more online accounts that I didn't really, care for at the time. But if you really want to see what people that, your average person is saying that you may not be hearing in person, go to Reddit. So this Reddit post, 7 months on the Ohio subreddit, says, JobsOhio now using state liquor tax dollars to incentivize employers to hire out-of-state employees for relocation. JobsOhio has started a new program that allows employers to claim a $15,000 incentive pre-out-of-state hire, up to 15 in STEM. So us Ohioans are now indirectly financing our own increased competition in the job market. Hooray. That's messed up. States and locals have offered relocation assistance monies directly to individuals for a while, but offering it directly to employers is a joke. I can only hope to gain funds for the program, deplete before the program depletes quickly. Anyways, our tax dollars at work being funneled directly to businesses to F us all. Enjoy the weekend. Yeah, literally. Onward. Like other tax incentives prepared by the state to benefit Wexner connected business deals, Ohioans are unlikely to reap any of the alleged benefits they will receive. Not surprised there. Indeed, with New Albany's data center growth long promoted as essential to the economic well-being of state residents, most Ohioans have instead only received engorged electricity bills despite the billions in taxpayer-funded incentives these large tech conglomerates have received. It's crazy, my girlfriend lives in Ohio, and her electric bill was kind of out of the wazoo for a second. We thought it was because it was the heat. It dropped a significant amount recently, but still seems pretty high in general for what it is. And it makes sense. All the energy being used in the state of Ohio, now, a little tiny home compared to these data centers, like obviously the amount of energy that is being used is going to cause, some people to have to pay. And, obviously, you can, the billionaires doing this, they're paying something, but it's not like it's affecting them in any way. It's putting a dent in, in their wealth. It's it's not putting a dent in their wealth, not a single dent. It puts a dent in many of the average people's wealth. So, like I said, can any average person actually relate to any of these tech billionaires like Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg and Palmer Luckey and Peter Thiel and Elon Musk? No. No average person can relate to them. No one can tell me otherwise. It's inarguable. It's objective. Anyone with that sort of wealth becomes compromised, becomes corrupted in some way. They're not good people. Hands down. Where did I leave off? Reaping the benefits, blah, 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 blah. Indeed, with new Albany data centers going to promote economic wealth. Being in the state's residents, most Ohioans have instead only received, engrudged electric bills. While Ohioans are turning out in record numbers to oppose building even more data centers, Ohio state legislators have responded by introducing legislation to create a new commission that would help dispel inaccurate myths about bringing more data centers into the state, particularly data centers planned to be built on land developed by Wexner's new Albany Company. Of course, the legislators are going to try and, make it seem like, oh, this is great, or, oh, it's not that bad. I mean, we'll see, I don't know. I live, part of northern Kentucky I live in is, booming with facilities, fulfillment facilities, logistic facilities, a lot of them being Amazon, a lot of them being a company called DHL, stuff like that, stuff to, get your Amazon packages to you, stuff to get, make online shopping a lot simpler and stuff like that, a lot more convenient. It's that people here in the area that I stay at are always going on about how, the population here has risen, drastically within the past, decade or so because of these fulfillment facilities and these, logistic facilities being built and all these jobs needing to be filled. It's crazy. I mean, it's this little suburb that, I call home, that used to, be so small. You'd run into everyone. Now is basically a big city without the skyscrapers. It's crazy. Anyways, take a drink of water real quick. Make sure the mouth isn't, keep the mouth going. In addition to Wexner's direct ties to bringing big tech giants to New Albany, there is also an important possibility that Epstein himself helped sow the seeds for their presence in the Wexner-dominated Columbus suburb as well. For instance, during the time that Epstein was intimately involved with New Albany and allegedly ran it for Wexner, he was the main, and some years the only, donor to the Edge Foundation. Learning about another organization. The Edge Foundation, beginning in 1999, was the host of the Influential Billionaires Dinner, in which Epstein was involved from its inception. From 2001 to 2017, overlapping several years with Epstein's deep involvement in New Albany, Epstein funded $638,000 out of the total $857,000 raised by Edge during the period. Subsequent reports have alleged that Edge's Billionaires Dinner was an influence operation ran for Epstein's benefit. Doesn't surprise me. Just another, thing another thing part of the whole Epstein, Epstein sphere, Epstein, the Jeffrey Epstein experience. That's crazy. Notable attendees of those dinners at the time Epstein was Edge's most influential donor, and includes several of the founders of major big tech companies that installed themselves at New Albany during and shortly after the period of time. Those founders included Jeff Bezos of Amazon and Google co-founders Sergey Brin and Larry Page. Bezos developed close ties to Epstein's fixer, Ghislaine Maxwell, while Brin and Page were both subpoenaed as part of the USVI case against J.P. Morgan regarding the bank's alleged facilitation of Epstein's sex trafficking activities. These subpoenas were issued because Epstein allegedly led the Google co-founders to bank with J.P. Morgan and Epstein's help, and Epstein helped advise Brin on structuring trusts for his children. So that's crazy. I briefly looked at this interactive web of the Epstein files that make it pretty convenient to type in words to see if they appeared in the files. And I did notice, without me needing to look deep into it, is that a big tie to Epstein is Bank of America, and all of his main financing went through there. But it just goes to show that even him influencing two other people to go bank with at J.P. Morgan, or issued because allegedly led the co-founders to bank with J.P. Morgan. So yeah, I mean, I didn't bother to look up, what banks appeared in the Epstein files. I just noticed the Bank of America one because it was the main one that appeared, within the web. You look at like the main dot being Epstein, and then the line that directly links to Bank of America, and I'll include if I find the link to that interactive web, I'll include it in the descriptions of this episode as well. Because it's insane. Because I work in the banking industry, so and it's just insane, that being an average, decent person like myself, is just being clouded over, and obviously all of the average, individuals in the world are just being clouded over by this BS taking place. All right. In addition, Epstein attended a 2015 dinner meeting brokered by Reid Hoffman and Peter Thiel, where Zuckerberg of Facebook, Meta, was in attendance. Thiel was considerably close to Epstein during this time and beyond, and was also an extremely influential early investor in and board member of Meta and Facebook. Thiel's Epstein ties, combined with Zuckerberg's own meeting with Epstein, could have played a role in Meta's decision to establish a presence in Wexner's dominated New Albany in 2017. Last year, Meta announced that they would build yet another data center promoted as the highest capacity data center in the world in Wexner's area. So this makes me think for a moment, like, because of how Ohio is, like I mentioned previously, how it's, a great place geographically, it's very strategic, talking about, it being in the part of the country that's in between the two mountain ranges. So I'll go off track for a second, but some time ago I went to this conference in Ohio, conspiracy theorists, talking about end times, blah, blah, blah. And they were talking about that Planet X, I think that's what they call it. I'm sure there's different names for it now, but it was theorized that this, so-called planet, I think they say it is like a big asteroid of some sort, supposed to, come hurling at us and, cause, a catastrophe, of sorts. And one thing they had brought up is they had theorized, how that catastrophe would look, and, obviously an impact like that causing a big flood of some sort, waves beyond, like, going as high as skyscrapers. And one thing that they had theorized is that the waves would not be able to surpass the Rockies and the Appalachians, making, part of the Midwest and southern region of the United States a theoretically safe place to be during a time like having, a rock hurling toward us. And obviously, it's all subjective. It depends on, how big that rock is, because if it's big enough, we're all going down. So yeah, anyways, regarding, Ohio in general, would these billionaires naturally just go there even without the help of, Epstein or even Wexner himself? Because, it's not hard to, be, a lot of these guys are considered what they call like futurists, and what that means is basically like they can look at a situation, they can look at what's going on and kind of have multiple predictions of, what could happen. Or, it doesn't even have to be what's currently going on, but they see like a piece of land somewhere, or they see like a geographical space, and they're like, this is great for, they take in consideration, a bunch of different things like, elevation and how easy excavation will be, and how easy fracking might need to be, how cheap the land is, the policies, all this sort of stuff. And they have teams around them feeding them this information. So it does make one think, if Wexner and Epstein never existed, if let's take it even further, if Ohio didn't have any sort of a richest person that came anywhere close to being like a Wexner or a tech billionaire, would these tech billionaires still naturally gravitate towards Ohio, being a place they want to put their data centers in? It makes one think. Okay, on to the next section. This one's titled How Wexner Designed Ohio's Corporate Welfare System, Funded by Taxpayers. Let's get into it. Let me take some water real quick. Also, let me remind you, don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, you know the drill. If you are watching this, also go ahead and click the link to my LinkedIn page, connect with me. I'm always down to connect with people. Let's talk. Maybe I'll have you on Table Talks. So, always down to get communal and get connected with, anyone. The last guy I had on the Table Talks session, James Lemus, we connected on LinkedIn initially, and he lives all the way in Arizona. It was the first time I did a virtual episode, so it was really cool to have that experience. Don't forget to check that out too. So anyways, the question thus remains, why Central Ohio? Guess we're going to get into a little Ohio discussion. New Albany was hardly a formidable city before Wexner and Epstein located their business dealings there, with a population of just over 1,500 citizens by 1990. By 2000, it had grown to just over 4,000 citizens, and has seen a 180% growth since, leaving the small and powerful suburb of Columbus sitting at a population of around 11,000 people today. 11,000 people dealing with this directly. A whole state of people. How many people are how many people live in Ohio? 11.9 million. 11,000 in New Albany. 11.9 million people directly affected to some extent by these data centers. 11,000 people directly affected. It seems too subtle to, say for the residents of New Albany that are dealing with this BS. They're based, dude. I feel so bad for them. I thought about this last night. I am going to New Albany. I'm going to do some gonzo journalism and, expose what's going on. I put it in air quotes because so many people are, doing that these days. And I don't know, feels only right to go there. And I'm sure someone's already has done a New Albany one. I'm sure if I, type it into YouTube on my feed, someone, the Tyler guy or whatever, will have made a video about it already. So, but still, would like to do that. Reporting from Data Center Frontier in 2024 speculates as to why this region was chosen to house so many data centers. Historically, this parallel was a systematic importance to the Union Pacific Railroad system. The fiber providers such as AT&T, Verizon, Comcast, and more ran their broadband cables alongside the rails of the first transcontinental railroad. Interesting. Nice history lesson right there. I mean, you hear something like that, AT&T, Verizon, Comcast, and more running their broadband cables alongside the railroads of the Union Pacific Railroad system. It's kind of like, what would evolve from there would be the big tech billionaires doing their data center stuff. I wonder what people at the time of when AT&T and Verizon and all of them initially put their cables running along the first transcontinental railroad, how some people felt about it. According to a LinkedIn post, by current Oracle employee and former program manager of Microsoft's cloud developer services, George Moore, this fiber optic infrastructure provides the data centers with unprecedented access to the absolute highest bandwidth in a virtuous cycle of investment. More data centers drive more traffic, which drives more fiber optic cables, which drives more data centers. That interesting, yeah. So let's break that down really quick. What he says. So this fiber optic infrastructure provides the data centers with unprecedented access to the absolute highest bandwidth in a virtuous cycle of investment. Literally a cycle, like I said, more data centers. So the more data centers that get built up drive more traffic of people online, doing their thing, blah, 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 which drives more fiber optic cables needing to be made, installed, which drives more data centers. Cycle. Revolutions. Gotta find humor, with it, with just anything. Find humor at any point in your life, and you will get through it. Not to remain a speculative theory, this flywheel of data center build-outs pushed by fiber optic growth as described by Moore, has driven Ohio to become a leading state for data centers. According to reports from datacentermap.com, Ohio is currently home to 193 data centers, making it the fourth-ranked state in the country behind Virginia, Texas, and California. It now boasts more data centers than its neighboring states, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Indiana, combined. Well over half of these data centers are situated in central Ohio, with 121 and counting in the Columbus, New Albany area. Fun facts. So, continue on. So, unsurprisingly, the New Albany Company views itself as being central to Ohio's transformation. For instance, the company's current CEO, Bill Ebbing, told Forbes that the establishment of the Silicon Heartland in New Albany will redefine Ohio's economic future, providing generational job opportunities while helping to reduce the country's dependency on foreign manufacturing of semiconductors, referencing Intel's planned New Albany-based plant. Yep, and more talk about jobs. And we could, there can be a table talk session about jobs and, what the history of, job and job seeking and companies having jobs, open to the public, and, the philosophy behind, unemployment, being employed, the laws that go into, what employers can and can't do, how they keep you sucked in, As a result of New Albany's effort, Ohio has now taken center stage as the hub of the Midwest Semiconductor Network, MSN. That network is notably led by Ohio State University, which is deeply connected to Wexner and fueled by federal investment through the Biden-era CHIPS and Science Act. What's the CHIPS and Science Act? Was not paying attention when that was signed into law. The CHIPS and Science Act of 2022 is a $280 billion U.S. federal law signed on August 9th, 2022, designed to boost domestic semiconductor research, development, and manufacturing. It provides $52.7 billion in subsidies, tax credits, and incentives to reduce reliance on foreign chip supply chains, strengthen national security, and create high-tech jobs. Reading that reminds me of... I'd need to look more into that. Can do probably a whole episode on that as well. But when we're talking about, signing stuff in the laws regarding... billions of dollars for research, development, and manufacturing in tech, makes me think of a portion of the big beautiful bill that was taken out because Congressman Massey and a few other individuals voted against it being in there, being the limitations that big tech companies have to build their data centers. And I guess Trump was attempting to have it signed in that they could have even more, unlimited access to putting the data centers wherever they please. So thank you, Congressman Massey, for being able to have that voted out of the big beautiful bill. But, even before, that, it just goes to show that, this CHIPS and Science Act of 2022, regardless of, obviously we can get into a whole debate on if it's, for the better or for the good. I don't think it's going to get anywhere, obviously. But only time will tell if it, actually, benefits what's going on. And I mean, what's going on is a subjective phrase. So, who's actually benefiting? How do people actually feel? And I think that's why it's important to, talk to the people around you. This is why I do that, being a social scientist, that's what drove me to, getting my degrees in the social sciences. So anyways, this isn't just federal taxpayer funds that are fueling the construction of the Silicon Heartland, right where Wexner conveniently wields such power. Another reason for Ohio becoming the epicenter for data centers is because of the unprecedented ways in which Ohio's private sector, led by Wexner-linked entities, has been able to divert Ohio taxpayer funds to heavily subsidize the development of the state's Silicon Heartland. After remaking what was once the village of New Albany into a public-private partnership under his control, Wexner turned his sights to the far larger neighboring city of Columbus, the Ohio state capital. In 2002, Wexner and Kessler teamed up with the longtime publisher of the Columbus Dispatch, John Wolfe, to create the Columbus Partnership. It was worth noting that Wolfe was very enmeshed with Wexner, serving on the board of Wexner's Center Foundation from 1990 to 2016. Wexner chaired the Columbus Partnership for nearly 20 years, stepping down in 2021. Just more fun facts that are definitely probably going to be more important later on. I'm not going to bother looking up who John Wolfe is, just another name, a part of this operation that, is just basically a pawn in the operation. Someone like this Wexner approaches because he knows he has an opportunity with him. He knows Wexner knows that, he has the money to, essentially influence John Wolfe into, not in some evil, manipulative type way. It's, nice and subtle. Wexner wants to make it look like he supports this guy, that he wants to work with this guy. And it's like, people like Wexner, people like the tech billionaires can, just do that with anyone, because I'm sure, if the dollar amount is in front of you and it's for the right dollar amount, who knows who's willing to succumb themselves to that. So the partnership describes itself as a nonprofit organization of CEOs from Columbus, leading businesses and institutions. In reality, it is a de facto economic development authority for the Columbus region, which includes 11 counties in and around the city. In fact, the Columbus Partnership created Columbus 2020. In fact, the Columbus Partnership created in Columbus 2020, which later became One Columbus. God, changing the names always. Now the official economic development group for the Columbus region. One Columbus is also a public-private partnership that is largely funded by private corporations with a significant presence in Ohio, including J.P. Morgan, Honda, AT&T, Bank of America, and of course L Brands, the Wexner-controlled parent company of the Limited. Several of its current investors are big tech firms like Amazon, who have become deeply enriched in Wexner's New Albany. One Columbus also developed the local government's current economic roadmap, which is aggressively focused on economic growth benefiting the corporate partners. So, going back to the title of this section being how Wexner designed Ohio's corporate welfare system funded by taxpayers. Teaming up with, this guy, John Wolfe, who, longtime publisher of the Columbus Dispatch, and then teaming up with, where is it? Did I see? I thought I saw another name. Maybe I'm going crazy. Anyways, how Webb and Goodwin describe in reality, it is a de facto economic development authority for the Columbus region, which is, in a sense, can be rightfully described by that because, let's just continue on. One Columbus partnership with local governments in the area has allowed them to offer the companies they court, many of which are foreign-owned, large incentives package that are funded by public money. Several of the businesses they court move to New Albany. Those companies are attracted by these generous taxpayer-funded incentives and then purchase commercial real estate, most often from Wexner's New Albany Company. The use of over-the-top incentives for corporate relocation to Columbus has been engineered by Wexner many times in the past, such as in the Wexner-backed effort to bring the CIA-linked Southern Air Transport to Columbus in the 1990s, discussed later in this article. Ultimately, the creation of Columbus Partnership, One Columbus, allowed him to both formalize and normalize agreements like that were once the product of backroom deals. Yeah, it's crazy. You really don't need, these people don't really need to do stuff in the shadows anymore. They figured out, like I said, they're playing this game of life, they packed it like no other. They don't need to be in the dark, in the shadows to, conjure up all these deals and all these plans. Now it's just, being at the right time, at the right place, having the right amount of money, knowing the right people to buy off, essentially. It's crazy. Right before this next paragraph, there's a video. Title of it is Les Wexner on Columbus Region's Monument. And, go ahead and view that, when you click on the link as well. Anyways, The Wexner-dominated Columbus Partnership has also produced another affiliate organization, Smart Columbus, which is focused on making Columbus a test city for other smart cities in the United States. That is hilarious because I remember the talk of, how Columbus was booming. Dude, it makes so much sense now because, within the past decade, at this like early 2015 2016, around that time, everyone was saying, dude, Columbus is booming, and I can see why they were saying that now. And understandably, it makes sense that no one knew about this stuff going on, or had this stuff going on wasn't phasing anyone. Essentially, it all seemed so normal, probably, to the average person. Who knows how many average people were around when all of this stuff was taking place. So it's crazy. Smart Columbus is another public-private partnership between the Columbus Partnership and the City of Columbus. One of its goals is to end the use of privately owned conventional cars in the city, replacing it with electric public transportation. The organization was created in 2016 after the city received a $50 million Department of Transportation grant to aid the effort, along with millions more from the family foundation of Microsoft co-founder Paul Allen. This goal is notably analogous, I think that's how you say it, analogous to a goal promoted by the U.S. government's National Security Commission on AI, whose members include U.S. intelligence officials and representatives of big tech firms, including those which own major data centers in New Albany. Wexner's Columbus Partnership is also a network partnership of an organization called JobsOhio, as mentioned before previously. JobsOhio's other regional partners, which are 7, including the Columbus Partnership, are public-private partnerships or private sector-led nonprofits, essentially modeled after the Columbus Partnership, but focusing on different areas in the state. As noted earlier, JobsOhio prepared the large incentive package for the Intel New Albany deal, as well as more recent Anduril deal discussed later in this article as well, among many others. So, a lot of, names of companies, a lot of names of people to keep up with. In the description, I will maybe put like a little glossary of all these names of people and companies, and what a lot of this stuff means, like public-private partnerships, private sector-led nonprofits. These are all words that average people may not know the definitions of, may not understand what they do. So I will definitely do my best to consider to put like a glossary in the description, so it can be like I said, I want this to be as comprehensive as possible for the average person, because I'm an average person and this stuff is important. JobsOhio is a very controversial organization. Created in 2011, it is the privatized replacement of the Ohio Department of Development that takes in money from what was once a public asset, Ohio's state liquor tax, which it leased the rights to through 2039 for $1.4 billion. Its lease was outrageously extended through 2053 at no additional cost to JobsOhio by the Ohio-controlled board last year. 4 years after it was created, it took in well over the $1.4 billion it had paid for those rights. Those funds, which would have otherwise gone to fund the public sector, have ostensibly been spent on economic development. However, JobsOhio has been unable to produce data to back up its bold claims about job creation. While it is unknown how many jobs the group actually added, what was provable stacked up over the years are the group's known expenditures. Interesting. Get some water. gonna check the camera real quick, just make sure everything's good. I'll obviously cut me getting up and coming back in from the video. So, all right, I actually think I'm gonna cut this section now. We're almost an hour into recording, and I kind of want to adjust the camera to get the sunlight out of, you know, I'm sure there's a big glare, so I'm sure that you guys are hating watching this right now. So, cutting it at part 2 now. So we'll catch you in part 3. Hey everyone, thanks again for watching. It means a lot. Don't forget again to subscribe, like, dislike, leave a positive comment, leave a negative comment. I don't care. Thanks again for watching. We'll catch you next time.